my name is Samantha Banchik, and I'm one of the product managers working on HCP Vault. As Armand mentioned in his keynote, we are super excited today to be announcing the launch of our beta of HCP Vault hosted on Azure. But before I get into this announcement and how you all can participate, I want to take a brief moment to reflect on why we decided to offer Vault as a managed service and just how far we've come since then. Prior to the release of HCP Vault, self-managed Vault was widely known as one of the most mature and trusted offerings for secrets management in the market. While the value proposition of Vault was and continues to be well understood, customers using Vault still assumed a lot of responsibility. And this responsibility persisted throughout your planning and deployment processes. Everything from initially getting Vault stood up, to operating and managing your clusters after the fact, to handling the underlying infrastructure the service was actually built upon. Management was fully on you as the administrators, operators, and developers. With that being said, we knew there had to be a way to offer Vault as a managed service, one in which we at HashiCorp could handle the underlying infrastructure and operations so that you as the consumer could focus on actual product adoption. As I mentioned, self-managed Vault users, whether you're coming from open source or one of our various different enterprise offerings, had no issue in understanding the value proposition of one of our most successful products here to date. What was clear were the two main challenges outlined here. The first is that organizations like yourselves often lack the expertise required to run Vault successfully in production. HashiCorp customers tend to be multi-cloud oriented, which inherently adds complexity to your systems. As many of you went on to deploy Vault across multiple different architectures and cloud platforms, the amount of domain-specific architectural and operational knowledge required to run Vault successfully in production grew exponentially. Not only could we not assume that you had this architectural knowledge, but we found that the Vault-specific domain knowledge required to run the service successfully was also non-trivial. In addition to this operational skills gap, we found that many of you also had issues in terms of velocity, and that many of you wouldn't see production value in the service over a long period of time. This was often due to a variety of different organizational as well as technical constraints. Oftentimes, in order to decide whether or not you wanted to pursue using the service, it required internal alignment across various different platform, security, and operational teams. After coming across that internal alignment, you may have experienced multiple hours of triaging debugging in order to get the service running as expected. We've done our best to ensure that Vault works regardless of your different environments, but we recognize that even if we offer our best-in-class guides, resources, tutorials, and fantastic support staff, that each of your environments is uniquely complex, and that getting Vault up and running requires a substantial amount of upfront investment. Once we had a well-understood idea of the commonplace challenges you all had experienced, we knew there were a few key takeaways practitioners like yourselves should have when using HCP Vault. The first is that we knew we wanted to reduce your operational overhead. We here at HashiCorp act as your operators in a variety of different ways on HCP Vault. We take automated snapshots on your behalf every 24 hours, so you don't have to be as concerned with backups. We ensure the ease of monitoring and managing your audit logs in a variety of different ways. We constantly keep your clusters up to date on both the latest major and minor version releases. And finally, we want you to have the same trust and confidence you would have running the service yourselves to also persist in the cloud. And we do this by ensuring a 24/7 support staff and a rigorous 99.9% or 3.9 SLA. Finally, we knew that we needed to make Vault as easy to use as possible. I want to briefly draw your attention to the HashiCorp State of the Cloud Strategy Survey, in which 99% of respondents think automation is important for multi-cloud operations. We want to continue to universalize the workflow of setting up Vault when it comes to using it in the cloud. We do this by ensuring, regardless of your historic Vault knowledge, that spinning up clusters is as easy and simple as possible. For those of you who are familiar with setting up Vault, you may find the historic process that could have taken your organizations hours, months, sometimes even years, now only takes a simple matter of minutes and one button within our UI. We were largely successful in accomplishing both of these, and as of April of 2021, HCP Vault became generally available, with 2 tiers and 2 initial use cases in mind. The first was our development tier cluster. This is a single node cluster contained to a single region, only offered in one size and with a 25 client count limit. This tier was intended for non-production use cases, such as proof of concept or testing clusters. We knew that many of you were excited for a managed service offering of Vault, but may not be ready for that production commitment. However, we also recognize that many of you were anxiously awaiting this release and eagerly ready to take HCP Vault into your production environments. So we decided to also release the standard tier. This is a 3-node cluster, also contained to a singular region, but spread across availability zones. It's offered in 3 different sizes, small, medium, and large, with various different CPU and storage constraints. This tier has no client limit, so unlimited scaling potential, and is intended, as I mentioned, for production use cases, which means it also includes a production feature set, including capabilities like snapshot restoration and audit log visibility. We can say with confidence that both of these tiers are still offered today and remain some of our more popular offerings of our product. We had a largely successful GA and saw many of you begin to use our service, both on the development as well as the standard tier. But with that came an increasingly large amount of feedback. I'm going to briefly take the time to walk you through how we addressed all of your responses and just how much your input helped us shape our strategic roadmap in FY23 or as of last year. When we initially launched HCP Vault, we intentionally over-pivoted and only focused on the top use cases in regards to some of our built-in plugins. We knew that interest in a managed service would be high, and as more and more of you came onto the platform, the more use cases and expectations came with it. We knew that you expected the same bells and whistles offered on any of our self-managed offerings to also be supported as expected in the cloud. While we're built off of the same self-managed binary, we hadn't internally taken the time to vet and test the less popular secrets engines and auth methods. So in Q1 of this year, we heard your demand and carefully took the time to ensure that most of the secrets engines, auth methods, and database secrets engines that you would expect to work on any of our self-managed offerings also work as expected when it comes to the cloud. Our initial adoption of HCP Vault was strong, but with that came the pressure of how we get our users to grow and scale over time. Here at HCP Vault, it's not just about growing our adoption numbers, but also empowering our existing users to utilize the managed service to the best of its capability and grow that managed service into other parts of your organizations. As I mentioned previously, when we initially launched HCP Vault, we only launched with 2 tiers available, the development tier for testing and the standard tier for production. However, as more and more of you grew interested in the managed service, we found the additional need for another tier, for those of you who may have production workloads but may not be ready for the cost affiliated with our standard SKU. So we decided to offer the starter SKU as a middle ground, still with a production use case, but also including that 25 client count limit from dev. Not quite as costly as our standard tier, and with a lower support level affiliated with it. Along a similar vein, we found we needed a tier for those of you who run applications and infrastructure with geographically distributed data centers and users. So we decided to also offer our only multi-region offering of HCP Vault, the Plus SKU, earlier this year. I'll go into the Plus SKU in a bit more detail in my next slide. I'm sure many of you are wondering, how are existing users able to take advantage of our new offerings as they are rolled out onto our platform? We saw that many development customers who may have initially utilized HCP Vault for testing were ready to move on to production into one of our other offerings, Starter, Standard, or Plus. Along a somewhat similar note, we found that many standard customers who had initially spun up small clusters were beginning to hit those CPU and storage limits, and may not have wanted to move in terms of tier, but did have a desire to move up in terms of size. So, also towards the end of 2021, we decided to offer in-place cluster resizing, so that customers could not only seamlessly transition between the tiers, but also within the different sizes without losing any of your historical data. Finally, as I mentioned towards the beginning, customer adoption is still top of mind when it comes to HCP Vault. We knew we wanted to address a wider market and found the demand for a managed service offering of Vault was particularly strong in the Asia-Pacific regions. So, to meet this demand, we expanded our AWS regional coverage and now offer you the ability to spin up HCP Vault clusters in both the Sydney and Singapore AWS regions. As I mentioned, the Plus SKU was intended for geographically distributed data centers and users. Enterprise parity was and continues to be top of mind on HCP Vault, and as replication is one of our more popular Vault enterprise features, it seemed like a good place to start. For those of you familiar with replication, you may note that setting up replication was a notoriously laborious process. Everything from initially getting your primary cluster stood up, to generating that secondary token, to then going on to generate your secondary cluster in an additional region, not to mention all of the auditing required to ensure that replication works as expected, it was often a very timely and painful process. We wanted to not only streamline this process, but offer you the ability to take all of the advantages of replication in our cloud. So we decided to release the Plus SKU, which offers all of the features included in our standard tier, in addition to multi-region performance replication. For those of you unfamiliar with the traditional benefits of performance replication, we typically like to think of two. The first is that it supports lower latency or more performant workloads, and the second is that it can enforce data locality for Vault data specifically in one of two different ways, either by utilizing path filters or by offering you local mounts. Replication should work entirely as expected on HCP Vault without all of the headache of historically having to set it up yourselves. Finally, as I mentioned, enterprise parity continues to be top of mind when it comes to feature additions on HCP Vault. So, coupled with this release, and shortly released as a fast follow, we decided to also allow you to utilize multi-factor authentication across all of our tiers at HCP Vault development all the way through Plus. Even though we here at HCP Vault take a lot of the operational burden on your behalf, we never want you to feel a lack of control or uncertainty in regards to what's going on with your clusters behind the scenes. We want you empowered to make customizations in the same way you would be able to on any of our self-managed offerings. When we initially launched HCP Vault, we gave you very limited visibility as well as control over the operations we do in order to keep your clusters up and running. So we decided to offer you a variety of different features to better give you that management capability. The first was through our grace periods functionality. Should you find yourselves in a situation where you need to delete your Vault clusters or find your Vault clusters have been deleted for you, you can now seamlessly restore them with up to 30 days and no data lost. We also recognize that many customers may be making local geographical changes or may want to take advantage of a region that may not have previously been there when they first spun up their Vault clusters. So, coupled with the release of this feature, we now allow you to restore your snapshot in a region that may differ from the one your cluster was originally created in. In addition to our grace periods functionality, we also decided to allow you to have more refined upgrade controls. When we initially launched HCP Vault, we made a commitment to always keep your clusters on the latest and greatest major and minor version stable releases. But we gave you very little say in when exactly these upgrades will roll out to your clusters and very little visibility into what that upgrade process looked like on our end. So we decided to offer a variety of different management controls to help you better see how this process works on HCP Vault. The first way we planned on doing this was by now offering Standard and Plus customers the ability to set a maintenance window. This is a day of week and 4-hour time period in which all major version upgrades will roll out to your cluster. Should you desire even more refinement when it comes to your upgrade process, we also allow you the capability to opt out and opt for push button or manual upgrades within our UI or Terraform provider. In this way, you know exactly who instigated the upgrade and when exactly the upgrade took place on your clusters. I want to briefly turn your attention to a part of this feature that doesn't necessarily have to do with increased management, but is equally as important when it comes to our platform operations. Now, coupled with every major version release, we'll be notifying you, both within our platform as well as via email, as when the release is initially made available, as well as when the release has been rolled out on your clusters. In this way, you can adequately prepare for all deprecations as well as feature additions coming out with new releases and know exactly when you can take advantage of both of them in regards to our cloud. Regardless of how you plan on interacting with Vault, monitoring Vault, or purchasing Vault, we want to make sure you have the same great experience. So there were a number of different features we decided to roll out this year in order to better the user experience when it comes to utilizing our managed service offering of Vault. The first is that we wanted to make audit logs as ingestible and easy to consume as possible. When we initially released at GA, we only offered you the ability to download audit logs in bulk via our UI, but we offered you no continuous streaming mechanisms or any third-party observability built-in configurations. So, to better this experience, shortly after GA, we now offer 3 different audit log and metrics export configurations. We surveyed our customers and decided to initially start off releasing our 3 most popular ones, those of which are still offered today, those being Datadog, Grafana, and both Splunk Cloud and Enterprise. We recognize that many of you may also be coming from one of our other more popular products here at HashiCorp, Terraform, and we wanted to ensure that HCP Vault was also as developer-friendly as possible. When we initially launched the product, we did also offer an HCP Terraform provider, but it had very limited capabilities in comparison to the other ways in which you could interact with your Vault clusters. So, earlier this year, we carefully took the time to ensure that any action you can take via our CLI, API, or UI can also be mimicked using the HCP Terraform provider. Finally, I've been discussing a lot about our enterprise users or existing Vault users, but we also want to ensure that the managed service offering of Vault is easily usable for those of you who may be new to Vault or have less experience. So there were a number of different design improvements we rolled out specific to this type of user. For those of you unfamiliar with how Vault pricing has historically worked, there are a number of different ways you can purchase our product. You can go through our traditional annual contract model, or as of March, opt for flexible consumption pricing, or you can go for pay-as-you-go pricing, which scales month over month dependent on your usage. We find that many new to Vault customers may be hesitant to take advantage of our annual or flexible contract models, but are a bit more open in regards to pay-as-you-go pricing. So, to make Vault pricing more easily consumable to them, we decided to offer a convenient cost estimation footer at the bottom of your cluster spin-up page, so that you can more accurately predict just how much running a managed service will cost you month over month. Finally, we decided to offer a better, more guided getting started experience. In this way, while your clusters are being spun up, as well as after the fact, you'll be exposed to embedded guides, content, and tutorials so that you can better bridge that skills gap I talked about earlier and readily take advantage of your HCP Vault clusters as soon as they are readily spun up. I'm extremely proud of just how far we've come as a managed service and all of the improvements we've made over the course of the last year. But with that being said, we know we still have a lot of room for improvement. We plan on continuing to grow and scale at a comfortable pace and mature as a platform. I'm now going to briefly walk you through some of our committed roadmap initiatives that will be occurring over the course of the next year. We want to continue to make our platform even more resilient, continue to offer you the management configurabilities in regards to your backend operations, and continue to give you even more platform visibility. The first way we plan on doing this is through co-location. Currently, all of your snapshots are exclusively stored within the US, and while your audit logs are traditionally stored within the same region as your cluster, should you go to download them in bulk via our UI, they are temporarily sent back to the US to be concatenated before they are sent back to be co-located within your cluster region. We recognize that many of you may have more strict data locality policies in place. So to better support you, we will be co-locating all of your snapshots and audit logs within the same region as your cluster. We want to continue to give you even more configuration and management opportunities in regards to your backend operations. Currently, all snapshots are exclusively stored for up to 30 days after they are taken. But we recognize that some of you may have more stringent internal policies in regards to snapshot retention for up to 60 or 90 days. So we plan on giving you this increased configurability and offering you the option to set your snapshot retention for anywhere between 30 up until 90 days. Finally, I touched upon this in regards to some of our upgrade improvements, but we want to continue to give you even more visibility behind our behind-the-scenes platform operations. So we'll be offering you some additional control plane or event audit logs available within our UI. As I mentioned in regards to replication as well as multi-factor authentication, enterprise parity continues to be top of mind when it comes to all feature additions here at HCP Vault. You can expect us to grow our enterprise use case in a variety of different ways over the course of the next year. But for starters, we will be supporting the Oracle database plugin as well as Sentinel policies for those of you who may be more familiar with our Vault governance and policy package. Finally, as I'm sure many of you have heard over the course here at HashiConf, cloud expansion is top of mind for all of our products here at HashiCorp, and we here at HCP Vault are no exception. There are a variety of different ways we plan on expanding our footprint in the cloud, but for starters, we will be supporting all available AWS regions for your clusters, and we'll be offering you some sort of self-managed to cloud migration tooling over the next year. We recognize that many of you have been hesitant to take advantage of a managed service due to the traditional complications affiliated with migration, and we're going to do our best to ensure that when we do offer this tooling some point next year, it can cater to the most amount of variety of use cases as possible. Now that I've gone over all of our improvements since GA, to continue to follow along this cloud story, I'd like to now pull our focus more so towards multi-cloud. Again, drawing your attention to the HashiCorp State of the Cloud Strategy Survey, we found that 81% of you said that you were either already multi-cloud or planned on being multi-cloud within the next 2 years. And we here at HCP Vault are no exception to that rule. While HCP Vault was launched with the ability to work across multiple different cloud environments or platforms, it was only hosted on one. After initially releasing exclusively on AWS, the demand for Azure progressively became even more clear over time. We recognize that part of being a multi-cloud solution is also being multi-cloud hosted, and that in offering an additional cloud provider, this isn't just a step forward for single cloud environments or siloed cloud usage, but hybrid usage as well. Regardless of which offering for secrets management you may pursue, self-managed Vault, HCP Vault, or otherwise, we hope to continue to inspire you to think cloud first when it comes to your security approach. With all of that being said, I'm extremely excited to announce that as of today, HCP Vault is available in Azure in public beta. This beta will continue to be free throughout this beta period, and I'm extremely excited to announce that we are expanding our cloud footprint in more than one ways in regards to our managed service offering of Vault. I'm going to briefly touch upon what you can expect in terms of regional coverage, as well as some of the features you can expect to be released during this beta period, before I get into how you yourself can actually participate. As this is only a beta, we do expect to support even more regions in regards to Azure, but for now we'll be exclusively focusing on the United States and Europe, with 4 regions offered in each. As I mentioned, we will be expanding our regional footprint in regards to GA, and so we continuously ask for your feedback on what regions you would like to see HCP Vault supported in regards to Azure. But what features can you actually expect in terms of the beta? As of today, we will only be offering you the ability to spin up our development clusters. As a reminder, this is our single node cluster with a 25 client count limit contained to a single region and intended for non-production use cases. We recognize that many of you may also be interested in looking at what some of our production-grade offerings may be looking like in terms of Azure. So, as the beta period continues, we will also be gradually releasing both our starter and standard tiers, as well as all of the features that are coupled with them. This includes features and functionalities such as audit log viewing capabilities, snapshot restore capabilities, some of those increased upgrade options I talked about earlier. The list goes on. In addition to this, should you initially spin up your development tier cluster and later on want to take advantage of one of our other more production-grade offerings during this beta period, we will also be supporting in-place cluster resizing so that you'll seamlessly be able to transition both between your development tiers as well as starter and standard. We also promise to maintain any clusters spun up in the beta in the up-and-coming GA. So, should you decide that you want to spin up one of our more production-grade offerings, you'll still be able to take advantage of all of the work you've done post-beta. Finally, we want to ensure that the same great experience you've grown to love on AWS is also available on Azure. So we'll be offering you the option to spin up any of these clusters and manage them via both our UI as well as the HCP Terraform provider. So, if you are interested in trying out the HCP Vault on Azure public beta, you can go to the link prescribed above and either create a new HCP organization or utilize an existing one in order to start spinning up development clusters as of today. I want to reiterate that this beta is entirely free and publicly available, meaning there's quite literally nothing stopping any of you from participating in this beta as of today. We will be continuously asking for feedback and reports on your experience, and I'm extremely excited to look at how all of you begin to utilize HCP Vault in this additional cloud provider. As a recap over everything I discussed today, I first went into why we decided to offer a managed service in the first place. I then talked about what that managed service initially looked like and how much we've improved since we became generally available in April of 2021. I then piqued your interest in some of our up-and-coming roadmap features and additions. And finally, I talked through how we're supporting multi-cloud deployments in HCP Vault and offering HCP Vault on Azure in public beta. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me today. I'm extremely excited for the rest of the year and everything that's to come. I hope that you enjoy the rest of HashiCorp Global and everything that Los Angeles has to offer. Thank you.